So I'm going to move on and welcome Strasz, Tom Strasz. I think most people in this room on this meeting know Strasz really well. You're artistic director for the Wagon Play pageant this year, and we're really pleased to welcome you tonight to update us on plans and what we can look forward to. Can we hand over to you?
Wonderful. It is lovely to see you all and to be invited to talk a bit more about the wagon plays this year. I'm going to keep it relatively brief because I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot more about the specific details for your own wagon. We've obviously faced a huge amount of difficulties kind of trying to get the wagons rolling again this year. There has been the obvious thing of COVID. We've also had a lot of issues with public spaces in the cities are increasingly commercialised. It's increasingly difficult to find a space in the city. The Minster are undergoing a massive revamp of all of their grounds, and so we've not been able to use some of our usual spaces. And a lot of older supporters have either passed on, moved on, or who are simply at a point where they want to hand on to the next generation of mystery play creators. However, the good thing is that the wagons as a theatrical form are incredibly resilient to COVID. They're outdoors for a start. They're smaller casts, which means it's a bit easier to handle if one person is forced to isolate. It doesn't mean the full 100 or so people in the cast have to do so. And because they're episodic, if one of the wagons can't actually perform, the show can still go on with the others. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to bring the wagons to the level of spectacle that we usually manage. We also have a dedicated core of support, both from the Mystery Play Supporters Trust, from supporters across the city and indeed across the world. And of course, the fact that we have universities, schools, churches, and other civic groups involved in that. So one of the things that I love about the wagon plays is the fact that they do draw these big communities together. We draw communities that perform together, but we also draw all of these communities that have become part of it together. And I'm really hoping that this year we'll actually be able to create that spirit again. So what are the plans for this June, which are coming up incredibly rapidly? Well, as ever, we want to produce a performance that brings the public spaces and the streets of York to life again. We want to encourage audiences to look at York and its heritage and its future with fresh eyes. And we want to sustain the plays and to transform them for the future. So our theme is exactly that, sustainability, or in layman's terms, reduce, reuse, and recycle. What we're trying to do is work with what we've got available and to transform them momentarily into something new and fantastic. That might be an existing play and a wagon that's being transformed, that's being revamped, such as the creation of the Guild of Builders this year. It might be taking a fragmented script and finding a new way to repair it, to fill the holes that the Lords of Misrule are going to be doing with The Last Supper. Or it might be finding themes of sustainability, as Paul and you will be doing with The Flood. And it works in a practical sense as well, with all of the groups encouraged to reuse their old sets, their old props and costumes, to source materials from charity shops and attics, and to try and make this as sustainable as possible. And whilst it's still early, I'm also asking groups to think about what happens once the plays are actually over. So what happens when you've finished it? It's the weekend after. You've got a ton of plastic props, you've got bits of wood, you've got random stuff that you thought that would be really useful. What happens to it? Where does it go? Does it go into landfill? Hopefully not. And by thinking about that earlier, it becomes easier to include that in the whole process. And of course, thinking about what can be sustained for the next round of the cycle in 2026. What skills and knowledge do you have that we can pass on? So in a sort of practical sense, what are we looking at for June? Well, we're going to be using 4 sites again as usual. Some of those have been confirmed, including St Helens Square, St Sampson's Square, and King's Manor. We've got one still to come, but we're hoping to find somewhere that allows families and friends to spread out their picnic rugs and watch it in the sun. We're also going to be returning to the Shambles. So we're going to be going to the marketplace again for this time 2 weekday evenings, again with a smaller selection of the plays linked by a professional narrator. Now, there is, of course, one element of the idea of reduce, reuse, and recycle that I haven't really addressed, and that's the idea of reduction, of reducing. What we decided is that rather than trying to do the sort of 12, 13 plays that we've done in the past, is reduce it down to the number of guilds of 8. And what that will allow us to do is to concentrate our resources on those 8 plays. And we'll also give more time for those plays to breathe. We know that in the past there's been a bit more pressure on plays to try and get it all done in 20, 25 minutes. Since we've got less plays, it means that productions such as The Flood will have more time to spread out. So the 8 plays will be The Creation by the Guild of Builders, The Fall of Adam and Eve by the Free Men and Vale of York Academy, The Flood, this time by York Mystery Play Supporters Trust and the Guild of Cordwainers, The Three Kings by St Luke's Church, The Last Supper by the Merchant Tailors, and Lords of Misrule, which I'm quite excited about because I don't think it's ever actually been performed on the wagon plays before. The Crucifixion by the Butchers and Riding Lights Acting Up Company, and The Last Judgment by the Merchant Adventurers. There's also one still to be confirmed that I'm hoping to have in place in the next week or 2. So that's a sort of very brief rundown of kind of what we've got planned. I'm very excited about it all. I know that all of the dates will be going around, if they haven't already, to all of the members in the newsletter. I'm going to just leave it there because I have another mystery play rehearsal to get to at 8 o'clock for a completely different show. Doing the Mary plays at All Saints North Street at the end of March. So again, I will send details about that around. But I'm really excited to hear more about the Flood, and also to see the Flood as you start rehearsing. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.